And then pass microphones around.
You have to talk into that or they cannot be heard.
Okay.
So like some of the comments that you can
No, they'll have to just pass them back and forth. So. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat.
And on this Shabbat, we are especially thinking right now of the land of Israel. And so before we actually begin, I would like for us, first of all, to take our deep breaths, but then we're going to start with a prayer for the land of Israel. But it is Shabbat, and we are leaving our cares at the door, so let's all take a deep breath and let it out very slowly. And we'll try that one more time. Another deep breath. And let it out very slowly. So we're glad to welcome back our Jacob's campers. We've missed them. We've missed them the last few weeks, but they're here, and we are glad to have tonight a very special program. So you'll notice that the service is going to be shortened a lot in order to give us the last half hour for a very special panel. And maybe I'll just say this much right now. It is such a pleasure for me to welcome tonight my good friend Malky Schwartz from ISJL, my new friend Shalon Lewis from the Valencia Center. They have others with them, so we welcome Lonnie and we welcome Matthew as well, but they're not on the program. Benjamin Maxey is going to be on the program, and Curtis Joseph is going to be on the program. So we are very, very pleased to have something special for tonight. But before we do anything else, it seems appropriate to me that we turn to the very last page of our prayer book, where we will start even before we welcome Shabbat in praying together the very last paragraph on the page. And we say together, we pray for the land of Israel and its people. May its borders know peace, its inhabitants tranquility, and may the bonds of faith and fate which unite the Jews of all lands be a source of strength to Israel and to us all. God of all lands and ages, answer our constant prayer with a Zion once more aglow with light for us and for all the world, and let us say, Amen. And now we turn to page 82, and we have no assigned candle blessers in the summer because we are all the candle blessers. So we rise and we turn to page 82, and we read together. These lights are only flickering flames, yet flames illumine our uncertain steps. Flames remind us of Sabbaths long past and of their beauty that delighted our hearts. May they inspire us to work for the great Sabbath of peace. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. And we will remain standing as we turn to page 165, 166 for our blessing of the wine, or 166 and 7, however you like to do it. And we say together, Baruch atah
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
We praise you,
eternal God, sovereign of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine.
And we then add, we praise you,
eternal God, sovereign of the universe. You call us to holiness with the mitzvah of Shabbat, the sign of your love, a reminder of your creative work, and of our liberation from Egyptian bondage, our day of days. On Shabbat especially, we hearken to your call to serve you as a holy people. We praise you, O God, for the holiness of Shabbat.
And you may be seated if you turn to people around you and say Shabbat Shalom. And if you don't know those people around you, introduce yourselves to those people around you. And we resume our service on page 85. The synagogue is the sanctuary of Israel. Born of our longing for the living God, it has been to Israel throughout our wanderings a visible token of the presence of God in our people's midst. Its beauty is the beauty of holiness. Steadfast, it has stood as the champion of justice, mercy, and peace. Its truths are true for all people. Its love is a love for all people. Its God is the God of all people, as it has been said, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all peoples." Let all the family of Israel, all who hunger for righteousness, all who seek the eternal, find God here, and here find life.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Amen. Ve'alma divrach hirute, ve'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon ve'yomechon, u'v'chaye v'chol bet Yisrael. Ba'agala, ba'agala, u'v'izman kariv, ve'yimeru. Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevarach, le'olam lal me'almaya yitbarach. Yitbarach ve'yishtabach, v'yitpa v'yitroman ve'yitnaseh, v'yitadar ve'yitale v'yitalal, shemei dekudesha brichu. Brichu leila min kol virchata ve'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata, damiron be'olma, ve'yimeru. Amen. Baruchu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed.
We continue at the bottom of page 87 together. When justice burns within us like a flaming fire, when love evokes willing sacrifice from us, when to the last full measure of selfless devotion we demonstrate our belief in the ultimate triumph of truth and righteousness, then your goodness enters our lives and we can begin to change the world. And then you live within our hearts, and we through righteousness behold your presence.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed.
You may be seated, and we continue in English on the bottom of 88. You shall love your eternal God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your being. Set these words which I command you this day upon your heart. Teach them faithfully to your children. Speak of them in your home and on your way, when you lie down and when you rise up. Bind them as a sign upon your hand. Let them be symbols before your eyes. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Be mindful of all my mitzvot and do them. So shall you consecrate yourselves to your God. I am your eternal God, who led you out of Egypt to be your God. I am your eternal God. And we turn to the top of page 90. We are Israel. Our prophets proclaimed an exalted vision for the world. Hate evil and love what is good. Let justice well up as waters and righteousness as a mighty stream.
We are Israel,
Schooled in the suffering of the oppressed. You shall not oppress your neighbors nor rob them. You shall not stand idle while your neighbor bleeds.
We are
Israel, taught to beat swords into plowshares, commanded to pursue peace. Violence shall no longer be heard in your land, desolation and destruction within your borders. All your children will be taught of your God, and great shall be the peace of your children.
We are Israel, O God, when we are witnesses to your love and messengers of your truth.
You are my witnesses, says the Eternal One, and my servant whom I have chosen. Know me, therefore, and put your trust in me.
God,
When we proclaim you, God, our Redeemer, as did our ancestors on the shores of the Red Sea.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osef ele, nora tehilot osef ele, malchutecha ra'u v'anecha, bokei ayam livnei Moshe, zelianu ve'ameru, Adonai imloch, Adonai imloch, leolam va'ed.
The Ne'emar, and it has been said, the Eternal One delivered Jacob and redeemed us from the hand of one stronger than ourselves. Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. We praise you, O God, Redeemer of Israel. May we lie down this night in peace and rise up to life renewed. O God, spread over us your shelter of peace, of quiet and calm, and bless us with rest. And let a time come when morning will bring no word of war or famine or anguish, a time of happiness, of contentment and rest. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom, aleinu va'al kol amo Yisrael, va'al Yerushalayim. We give thanks for the night and its rest and the promise of peace for all the world. Please read with me. The people of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath in every generation as a covenant for all time. It is a sign forever between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days the Eternal One made heaven and earth, but on the seventh day God rested and was refreshed. Please rise for the tefillah on page 93.
Adonai tzefai tiftach ufi agita hilatecha. Eternal God, open my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Leah, Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanara, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, Ve'koneh Hakol, Ve'zocher Hasdei Avot v'Imahot, Umevi gula levnei v'nehem, leman shemo be'ahava, melech ozeh u'mashir u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah.
You may be seated, and we continue at the top of page 96. God, who answers prayer, be praised. May we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands, you are our God. Source of life and its wonders be praised. You are the miracle within all we behold. You are goodness, you are compassion. We give thanks to you forever. And we read together this prayer for peace. It is Shalom Rav, but rather than singing the words, we want to be sure we understand those words, so we read together. God of peace, of justice, and of love, be praised. Inspire us to banish forever hatred, war, and bloodshed. Help us to establish forever one human family united in peace. God of peace, bless us with peace. And now we take a moment for personal and silent prayer.
May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, be acceptable to you. God, my rock and my redeemer. God, my rock and redeemer.
We turn now to the back inside cover of our prayer book, where we express our concern for those who are ill, and we ask that God bless them with comfort. I'm going to read the names of those whose names have been given to me, and then I'm going to meet your gaze if you wish to add some other names of people for whom you are concerned. And tonight I have the names of Carl Beggy, Carrie Bollinger, Debbie Davis, David DeFatta, Lolita Dufauchard, Glenn Ellis, Jill Fixler, Tracy Gold, Val Gold, Susan Israel, Sister Mary Joan, Evelyn Kern, Jada Wynn, Justin Rutkowski, Lawrence Shore, Joanne Smith, Phyllis Steponzi, Stephen Zelanka. And if you have other names, then please, if you'd like to say them aloud, do so as my gaze meets yours. We say together, O God, in our hearts we name those who are facing illness and pain. We join our prayers with the prayers of all who love them. Give them renewed comfort and courage. Strengthen in them the healing powers you have placed within us all. Guide the hands and the hearts of those who are entrusted with their care. May the knowledge of your love and ours give added hope to them and to their dear ones. May they find even greater strength because our prayers are linked to theirs. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholim. We praise you, eternal God, the source of healing and health. We would also offer a prayer on behalf of the military, especially in this week when we are so cognizant of the need for military strength and protection, and yet we know so many people put themselves in harm's way. And so we say, Mishaberach Avotenu V'imotenu. May the one who blessed and protected our ancestors guard all those whom we have entrusted with the responsibility of defending our freedom and protecting us in this country, in the land of Israel, and everywhere they have been called to serve. May they return home safely, and let us say, Amen. Before we turn to the Helaine, it seems that I also have the pleasure not only of leading this service tonight, but also of standing in for the president to read the announcements. So, well, it says next Friday we're going to have one Shreveport Shabbat. That's actually tonight. That's actually tonight. So we're glad you're here. We're glad you're here. And since the rabbi is on vacation, Lonnie and I will actually lead Torah study and services tomorrow morning. This is very important. If you are interested in hearing a very wonderful story, it is the story of Malki, who is sitting here and who's going to lead our discussion tonight. Malki Schwartz is going to share with us tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock here at B'nai Zion the story of how she left the ultra-Orthodox world in order to pursue the life that she wanted to lead in helping the world through helping people. So it's going to be at 4 o'clock tomorrow. You need not have read about her. She is written about in a book called Unchosen. It's the story, I don't know the subtitle, the story of Hasidic rebels. But it is a story that features Malki and others who have left the ultra-Orthodox world, and she's going to share her story tomorrow afternoon at 4. You're all invited to be here. Kathy Plant, the new executive director of the Federation, wants to remind you to please attend the Federation annual meeting on Wednesday, this next Wednesday, July 16th, starting at 7. A very brief meeting and a free dinner in Lefkowitz Hall here at B'nai Zion. You were supposed to have contacted the Federation office by today to say that you would like to be there, but you could always, after Shabbat, leave a message on an answering machine. I have a feeling you will still be not only accepted, but gladly welcomed. Donations were made to B'nai Zion for pulpit flowers for tonight in loving memory of Morris Hyman from Dorothy and Bernard Lobel. So now, I told you it was going to be a brief service because we have this wonderful panel. We're going to turn to page 148, I think. Maybe even page 149. No, 148 for the Aleinu. And we're going to rise, and I would like to invite any children who are here who would like to help me open the ark. And children means teenagers, and it means young children. It means anybody who'd like to come up and open the ark. You are invited to come and join me. When they open the ark, we will all rise and do the Aleinu. But I need help. I need help. I've got help. I have help visiting from out of town. I have help that lives right here. I have help in people who are back from camp. This is a wonderful thing. Okay? Let's wait for the others so we can all help open. And if you didn't get to open, you can help close.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
So now we can close the doors down below, and then we'll close the doors. And when the doors are closed, we'll all be seated. Close them kind of carefully and did need help, and I had lots of it. Not only to see so that we could see the Torahs, but so that we could see the extension cords and the extra Torah covers and everything else we have stored under there. That's a good thing. We continue on page 149, where we say, Eternal God, we face the morrow with hope made stronger by the vision of your deliverance, a world where poverty and war are banished, where injustice and hate are gone. Teach us more and more to respond to the pain of others, to heed your call for justice, that we may bring nearer the day when all the world shall be one. On that day, the age-old dream shall come true. On that day, O God, you shall be one, and your name shall be one.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
And now we turn to page 151, where our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, let us meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. Please read with me on page 153. In nature's ebb and flow, your eternal law abides. As you are our support in the struggles of life, so also are you our hope in death. In your care, O God, are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh. Your power gives us strength. Your love comforts us. O life of our life, soul of our soul, cause your light to shine into our hearts. Fill us with trust in you and turn us again to the tasks of life. And may the memory of our loved ones inspire us to continue their work for the coming of your sovereign rule. However brief may be our time on earth, O God, you endow our fleeting days with abiding worth. We remember those who died at this season in years past. We take them into our hearts with our own, as on this Shabbat we especially remember Eleanor Abramson, Mary T. Weil Batt, J.R. Dawson, Johanna Neustadt Horn, Morris Hyman, Morris Leff, W. Zoli Lerner, Rose Mandel, Israel Mizell, Harvey Miller, Dorn Morris, Irvin Neerman, and Babette G. Rabe. In this moment of memory, our griefs and sympathies are mingled. Loving God, we rise now to praise God's name. Page 154 is the Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ba'alama divarach hurite v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye dekot beit Yisrael, ba'agala uzman kari v'yamru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevorach leolam olmei almaya, Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitparar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yithalev v'yithalal shemei degutsha barichu, le'elon min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiram v'alma v'yamru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. Osei shalom bimramav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, v'yamaru, amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, and I would say, and ask you to say, amen. So you may be seated, because now, having managed to do this almost exactly on time, I am going to ask you to sit back, get ready to listen to some very interesting stories. I ask that you listen in a way that you will go home tonight and think about what you heard. We called this evening something about, what did we call it? One Shreveport Shabbat. And often when we talk about one Shreveport, we think of one Jewish Shreveport, and we think we're talking about B'nai Zion and Agudath Achim. And that's great. We are one Shreveport Jewish community. But tonight we're thinking about one Shreveport as the whole community, the Jewish community and the non-Jewish community. And we're going to be talking in particular about saving lives, because we are taught that to save one life is to save the world. So I'm going to invite my dear friend Malky Schwartz to come up with the other members of the panel. They're going to stay up here, and we're going to use this microphone and the other microphone and pass them around so that everybody speaks into the microphone and everybody is heard. Is Craig still here? Okay, then we hope the microphones work. Oh, you're there. Okay, it's going to be. It's like if the microphone part is left to me, we might be in big trouble. But anyway, so welcome, please, our panel. I'm lucky I even know how to take the microphones out of the stands. Yeah, we're going to put them all together. And you can move them forward a bit if you'd like to. If y'all want to bring them forward, you can bring them forward. We want to be sure that you can hear everything, so we're going to...
And having said that, you have to talk in the microphone or they cannot hear you.
Okay, we got that.
If you're not talking in the microphone, they don't hear you.
Okay, so everybody who talks will talk into the microphone. You can be the holder of one. You want to be the holder of the other? Sure. And then pass them as needed.
Great.
Okay.
So I have the honor of starting us off, and I'm going to share a line that I also hope will set the tone of this conversation. Service without reflection is like eating without digestion. I'm aware of all of the amazing work that goes on here at B'nai Zion that impacts the larger Shreveport community. I know there's a mitzvah day, which translates to a good deed day, and I know that the congregation has been involved in a reading program that I've been fortunate to be involved in with our partner at the Valencia Community Center. And so today we're really going to take a step back to make sure we digest and to make sure that we reflect on what service really means, what it means to us, what it means to the people we serve. We're obviously not going to cover every part of service. We have a half an hour, and I intend to make sure that we stay within our time limit. But we will begin a conversation that hopefully will allow us to both think about past service experiences, so anything we've done to impact the larger community and address social justice in our larger community, but also that can help inform how we conduct service in the future. So what we're going to focus on are two parts of service. One is the personal experiences that really inform our motivation to participate in helping our larger community. That's one part. The other part is how we can make sure that service is meaningful and impactful for everyone involved. For the people who, in the traditional context of service, are often seen as the ones who both provide the service, but also the people who receive the service. And as we'll discuss, there aren't very clear lines between who is actually benefiting and who is the one who's giving. At times, it's the person who we actually feel like is in the position of the receiver. So I'm going to start out by asking, actually, Curtis to start out. And I'm going to try and talk with everyone. So I'm sorry if my back is to you, but I'm going to really try and make this a conversation that you're kind of eavesdropping in, but hopefully attentively. So I'm going to ask Curtis, I have to talk into the mic, to really describe your experiences growing up in Shreveport. In a previous conversation, we talked a little bit about how your experience is quite unique in that you got to travel and see a lot. But I'm hoping that you can really hone in on the years you spent in Shreveport and perhaps talk about some of your role models, some of your dreams that you had during, it was 8th grade, right, throughout high school. Some of the barriers that you faced and some of the opportunities. Not all of them, but just...
Since we're speaking about Eden, I'll try as best as possible to digest that question. I'm obviously from Shreveport. I was born here. I'm a military kid, as she pointed out. I spent time in Colorado Springs and St. Louis and different parts of Germany, and came back here through middle school and on into high school. So it is a different sort of perspective. My parents were divorced when I was 12, and I was raised primarily by my mother, and with the assistance of an aunt and God, obviously. And I have also a unique perspective in that my mother is the 9th of 10 children, and my father is the 3rd of 8. And my mother is the only one on either side of those, both sides of my family, to have gone to college. And so that gave me personally perspective in terms of valuing education and where education might take me. And when I realized that I was primarily what I am and how I am as a consequence of her having been educated, I all of a sudden realized I wasn't quite so special, but I was succeeding, if you will, as a consequence of my privilege and the opportunity to understand where education might take me. So that, in and of itself, kind of placed me on a track to be where I am now. It was nothing that I did on my own. It was a lot having to do with her privilege. And we spoke about this. Many of you may or may not know, I met my wife Barbara at a camp put on by the National Conference of Christians and Jews. And while I was at this camp in a subsequent year, I came very, very close and personal with the concept of that privilege and how that translates and how innocuous it is. Very subtle things create the privilege that make us who we are. They put this exercise on where they took everybody in the camp. These were primarily rising juniors in high school were the delegates, but there were adult advisors. Sue Rubenstein was involved in the camp, and the medics, all the staff, and they placed us together shoulder to shoulder across a field. And it was called the privilege exercise. And the participants would take steps forward or backwards depending upon their response to, again, seemingly innocuous questions. Questions like, were there more than 5 books in your house when you grew up? If so, take 2 steps forward. Did you have people telling you you can do and be what you'd like to? If so, take steps forward. Did you have people in your immediate family who were incarcerated? You know, take 2 steps backwards. About 25 or 30 questions along that line, things that you don't think about on a day-to-day basis. And at the end of this exercise, I mean, you had what started out as a very uniform line wound up being very disjointed, and toward the front of the line, younger, whiter people, toward the back of the line, older, black people. And once you should have seen the look on the people's face participating in this program once they realized what shaped them. It wasn't so much who we are or what we did, but the privilege around us. And so that kind of has always guided me, even before I saw that exercise, because as I pointed out, I was raised the way I was raised and where I was raised. I slept on my grandmother's couch when I was in high school for 4 years. And so I tell a lot of people that I know when we get involved in conversations like this, it's difficult to see how somebody else is living if you hadn't been there and if you don't open your mind up to kind of say there are other ways of life, if you will. So I could talk about that for 2 years.
And we'll get back to it. So thank you for starting to share with us. Shalon, I was hoping that you can share as the dynamite leader of one of the dynamite leaders, I would say, probably at the Valencia Community Center. What are your responsibilities and what motivates you to do your incredible work?
Hello, everyone, first of all. I get that question all the time, what is my responsibility? I believe everything. I mean, I'm in charge of everything. We have a senior citizen program. We have a school program. We have the open gym. We have a community youth garden, so on and so on. But what motivated me, I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. And once I moved here to Shreveport, let me go back. Basically, I lived in Watts. Most of you guys know it from the Watts riots and stuff like that. But what happens is there was actually a community center right there in the neighborhood where I lived in, and that was basically my safe ground. I mean, didn't too much. We was able to enjoy ourselves at that particular location. And so once I started moving around, we moved around. My family moved around a lot, and so on and so on. But most of the time, I will always live close to a Boys and Girls Club. And so what happens is once I get older, you kind of, you want to give back, because I know what the Boys and Girls Club did to me. I mean, I was safe there. I didn't have to worry about those different kind of problems. And so that's the same thing I'm trying to do there at Valencia Park Community Center.
Thank you. And can you expound a little bit on why that safe space was so important to you, and perhaps also why the community center is so important to the students who attend the center?
Honestly, I believe the same reason why it was safe for me back then is the same reason for the youth that comes there. The environment that they live in may not be the best, and they know when they come to a community center, or particularly Valencia Park Community Center, I mean, they are able to enjoy themselves and have fun and be kids. I have this rule, once you come through these doors, all your other problems stop. And you are no longer in the streets. I really don't care what you do in the streets. As long as you come here, you be at peace. And so, and pretty much we kind of go by that.
Yeah, and can you paint a little bit of a picture of what young people encounter when they are, as you said, in the streets, or when they're not in the safe space of the community center?
For example, I have 4 youth that just got out of juvenile. They stole a car, what was in the car, iPad, iPhone, and so on and so on. And so right now, they are in a detention center. And I feel kind of bad about that, because normally those same youth will be at the community center. But for some reason, that day they didn't come. And every time I get that feeling, I'm like, but I have that feeling every now and then, but it was true that time. Like, because they wasn't there, they was doing something they had no business doing, and therefore they got in trouble. And that was recently, that was last week.
Yeah. Thanks. So I want to give Benjamin a chance. I think people probably know Benjamin well. And so I'm delighted that you're here to talk about your observations of what your experience growing up in Shreveport has been, particularly in school. We were talking a little bit about that. So just describe your education experience and perhaps compare it with what you observe at the Valencia Community Center.
Well, all throughout my life, from toddlers through 8th grade, I've been going to a Montessori school. And at a Montessori school, you get very individualized attention. All the teachers are making sure you're learning what you need to learn. You learn at your own pace. And so all throughout my life, I've been kind of exposed to that kind of education, where I could excel by my own if I wanted to, or if I was having trouble, I could stay on a concept until I really got it down. And so kind of going through that education, I didn't really see what a public education was like. But now tutoring kids at the Valencia Center, I can kind of see how the public education differs from what I went through. It might not be as individualized, and I could tell that the boys I was tutoring were a little behind on reading. And of course, that's the purpose of the program, to get them caught up. But I could just see that not all people have that privilege that I had, of the education I had.
Great. I just want to point out the word privilege has come up quite a bit. Yeah, Benjamin, tell us what it's been like for you. What are some of the benefits that you get from going? Why do you like going?
Well, I was working with them on reading every Tuesday, so I would come every week, pretty much. And every Tuesday, I could see how much progress they were making, because they would be reading every day with different people. So one day I'd come with them, and they'd be reading one book, and then next week they'd be so far ahead, and they'd just be reading so much better. And so for me, it was just really, really pleasing to see how much progress they were making.
That sounds what? That's awesome. Great. So there's some conversation going on. We're going to continue that. So, Shalon, I was hoping you can talk a little bit about what some of the interactions are like that you see between volunteers generally, not necessarily from this great group here, but just in general. How are volunteers utilized at the community center, and how do you see the students responding to them?
With the volunteers, I believe most of the time with the students, they really don't care as far as race, because they're kids, they grow up, you know, they go into the different schools. Most of the schools are Caucasian or white, so it's really not a big deal. But more so for the adults, it's a whole nother level, though.
Mm-hmm. And we were talking a little bit about why it might be a little bit out of what people are used to when they walk into the community center. And we were talking about some of the assumptions that people have, and I'm assuming that that's kind of what you're referring to when you say that when the adults come in, you know, it's not necessarily what they're used to experiencing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I have a saying, actually it's in my office on my desk. It says, really don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's how it is with the youth. As far as the adults, I think that's a whole nother level.
Yeah, that's an amazing saying. And it's interesting because we were talking over lunch, and I mentioned a line that I have, which is, you know, we as a society understand the benefits of talking with people who have a PhD. You know we're going to walk away learning something from that experience. Right. But we have children who have a PhD in poverty who we can interact with on a regular basis. And can we learn from them? So it's, in addition to giving them the opportunity to experience care, it's also about giving them the opportunity to share some of their wisdom that they've kind of gathered throughout life. And that makes me want to jump back to Benjamin. What type of wisdom might you have picked up during your time at the community center?
Well, the boys I was tutoring, they would always they would always ask me if I had my own house or if I was living with my mom or my grandma or whatever, and so I really got to see kind of how different their lives were from mine. But they were always so happy, and so I guess one of the biggest lessons I picked up was it doesn't really matter what's going on in your life. You can always be happy, because, I mean, those kids were.
Wow. Another one for us. I like to point out the nuggets that we can walk away with. So, Shalon, you know, one thing that Benjamin brought up is this idea of privilege and the gaps in privilege that might exist between the children at the Valencia Center and someone like Benjamin. But then also the fact that they also have this amazing strength and this ability to have such a positive attitude. And I guess what I'm hearing is that an ideal volunteer really understands that and can appreciate the strengths of everyone who's involved, and can really look at a child and say, this is what makes this child so special. And I'm the one who's so fortunate to be a part of experiencing what makes that child so special. And I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit more about what makes an ideal volunteer. What is the volunteer that you dream of showing up every day to the Valencia Community Center? What type of person is that?
Start off with a person that cares. I think that's most important, because if you care about that particular individual or that child will also realize that. And I think at the time, most of the time, they don't care. They don't care whether or not what you have to teach them until they know what do you care about. Do you actually care about them? And so I think that's very important. Out of most, I don't think anything else is more important than that right now.
And is that a scarce thing to find volunteers who care? I'm just kind of startled by
that. It is. It is difficult to find that. Most of the time, when you get a volunteer, most of my volunteers, they don't stay long. And I was real surprised with this particular group. I mean, they came back regularly. I see Ben come and volunteer on days to just to tutor with the kids, and I think that's very important. And the kids get used to them, and now they all want to do some tutoring. I mean, they all want to be in the reading program with Ben because they got used to them. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, and And I'm interested because I think it's important for people to understand that a volunteer program, while people are able to contribute to the organization has to invest a whole lot to make sure that a volunteer program is well structured and that there is work available for volunteers to do. And so I'm just kind of curious if you can share a little bit about what it takes to really allow volunteers to become a part of the community center.
It's funny because the first thing come in my mind is space. Because for some reason at Valencia Park we have the youth. I mean, we don't have the space. And so what happens is we have to have different areas to do different things. And so sometimes we may have to put them in the gym and so on and so on. But as long as the volunteer is willing to come in to volunteer, we'll find the work for them to do at Valencia Park.
Yeah, but it takes someone who's really committed to making sure that the volunteer has work to do to strategize about which kids could sit in which corner and not disrupt another program. And so that's just a very practical way in which you, as the coordinator of this...
I told you I do everything, so yeah.
Yes. But that you have to invest a lot of thought and energy into making sure that Benjamin has a great experience when he goes and that the other volunteers do too. And it's not just something to take for granted.
Right.
I think that that's not often common either, that volunteers thank the coordinators for putting so much work and thought into what has to be there in order for the program to succeed. And so you mentioned care, which made me think about a story Curtis shared with me a little earlier about people who had good intentions but didn't necessarily care. And I'm wondering if you can kind of share that story and share some of the lessons that that story kind of taught you.
I think you're referring to when I was teaching in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
After law school, I moved down to New Orleans. Some of you may know I play the drums, and so I moved down to New Orleans to play music. And while I was down there, I taught. The first year, I taught at they still call them junior high schools. It's a junior high school over on the West Bank called Liverday. And the student body was made up of primarily middle to upper middle class people. The next year and a half, I taught at a school called Bishop Perry. And it was in the heart of the quarter, and it was funded by a Jesuit order out of Boston. And what they were doing was bringing kids who graduated from college and essentially had a desire to move on in upper education. And I was telling Barbara, and when I first started teaching there, I thought that it was a great idea. The way the school was set up was students had to apply to get into it, and it would take students from the 5th through the 8th grade. And once they graduated, the order would essentially pay for their education at any of the Catholic high schools in New Orleans. And I thought that was phenomenal. These schools cost a lot of money, and these kids now get access to this education. This is a great idea. What I learned is that the kids would graduate from the middle school. They would go to, the De La Salles, the Brother Martins, and the Jesuits down there, and they would flunk out. You would have a student who the summer before or had graduated as a valedictorian. I don't think that they forget that much over a summer, So I found that the kids weren't actually being taught so much as babysat, and the students who were coming down from Boston to teach them were primarily padding their resumes and moving on. And when we were sitting over lunch and we were discussing some of these issues, I was telling Malky how I didn't cry when my parents got divorced. When I found out what was happening with these kids and how they were being really underserved and used, if you will, that broke my spirit. And so to have people, who perform these functions and do it from the bottom of their heart, it really makes a difference, and it goes a long way with the kids.
Yeah, and I mean, if I might kind of draw some conclusions about what you said, I mean, part of why I could see that breaking someone's spirit is because we have some we trust that people have good motivations when they're doing good work, but at times their motivations may not be as good as we had hoped, or they just don't know enough to really be able to follow through on what it is that they set out to do.
And seize that opportunity.
And to seize that opportunity. So to realize that, they are coming into a situation where they can really make a difference and aren't really seizing that opportunity to do so. And so I want to assume that all the volunteers that we're talking, that we're talking to here, and future volunteers who we're talking with here, have the best of motivations. But how can we perhaps provide information to people so that they're not as startled, right, when they walk into, or overwhelmed when they walk into a situation that might not be familiar to them? But also, how can we bridge that caring gap? And I'm just wondering if you have any ideas about that.
Ideas are definitely difficult in that regard. I think Helaine pointed to it as this program is phrased, being one community and one Shreveport. I think there was a passage that we read, it's on page 87, and I'm going to paraphrase it to the extent that it spoke of internalizing and being in tune with not just showing up at a synagogue or at a church or wherever your service place may be, but to actually make that what you are, and have it dictate how you go about your day-to-day life. I think that is what bridges that gap. I don't know that there's necessarily a program for it or a prescription. It's something that you have to each take and own,
Thanks. And then
please turn to page 87 at the bottom. I encourage you to read that again.
Nice. I'm going to let Benjamin kind of be the last word before I close our discussion up. I asked Benjamin a little earlier, is it really important for B'nai Zion to organize a service experience for congregants? And he immediately said yes. And you had such a great explanation for why, and so I'd like you to share that with everyone, because really what I'm doing is plugging volunteering right now. And what I'm saying to you is that it's a beneficial experience for everyone involved, and that Ben thinks it's important, so therefore it is important, at least according to the Ben fan club, which has clearly grown over this past year. So Benjamin, tell us why you think it's important, and how you might encourage people to get involved.
Well, I think it's important because a lot of people may want to volunteer and want to get involved, but they just don't know where to start, or they wouldn't know how to get involved. And so if the community, like B'nai Zion, if they organized service projects, then people would know about them, and they would say, oh, well, I can work with my community to do this. This is a way I can get involved. So.
Great. So volunteering at the Valencia Center is one way in which you can be involved. And I'm assuming the contact person for that at this point is Helaine. And so if you're interested in volunteering and being a part of this great reading program or other future volunteer initiatives, please contact Helaine. I'm going to close out this conversation by saying that there's a lot that we can discuss. We can discuss how can B'nai Zion be a stronger resource for the Valencia Community Center, knowing how much great work is going on there. How can we really be authentic partners? We can definitely delve into everyone's personal experiences, because everyone here just seems to have overcome a great deal to be in a position to really be able to make an impact in the larger world. But I'm glad that we've kind of zeroed in a little bit on some of the stories here. And hopefully what you're thinking about is, how have my experiences in life shaped who I am? And how have they particularly shaped my sense of compassion? How have they given me a better understanding of people who may not have had exactly my experience? Benjamin's experience of privilege when it came to education wasn't necessarily something that related directly to the lack of education or the the gaps in education that he's seeing at the Valencia Community Center, or book education we'll call it, because they definitely have a PhD in other things in life, Curtis is saying. But just how our personal stories could really, we could tap into them a little bit more deeply and give them the opportunity to drive us in terms of our work in the world. But also, hopefully you can go home and think a little bit about, well, we always think about the students who were assisting in service projects such as this as the people in need. But what am I in need of? Am I in need of some personal satisfaction, or of the knowledge that I can make a difference? Or that I have the knowledge that I have a talent and I'm using it to make the world a better place? What type of feeling do I need that can really be addressed through service? Not because I'm saying that service should be selfish, but because I'm saying that there are amazing children at the Valencia Community Center who could help you fulfill that need. And that they're the ones who are providing us with that need to feel like we can make a contribution. And that's what I'm referring to when I said that the lines between the provider and the receiver are kind of blurred. We all benefit from service, and we all give when we participate in service. And so hopefully we can think about that sort of exchange and what it's like, and more importantly, about the types of relationships that can emerge from a meaningful service experience. So on that note, I'm going to close out and thank Shalon for taking time out of a very busy day of doing everything to be sitting here and adding that to your job description, or just your volunteer, for volunteering to be here tonight. There we go. And for Curtis for sharing some of your personal experiences and insights, and for Benjamin for being the young person who is really a champion for the congregation and hopefully will inspire so many people to get more involved. And I want to end off by just saying that Lonnie is here, and as Helaine mentioned, they'll be leading a Torah study tomorrow, and that too will focus a little bit on service. So you can look at that as an extension of this conversation. So to be continued. Shabbat Shalom.
So I want to thank everyone on the panel, but I also want to acknowledge that, yes, we wanted Benjamin to speak because we are so thrilled that a young person is able to give so much. But some of us are a little older, and we try to give too. So I want to acknowledge Laurie Levine, who has been there every week as well, and Vicki Marks, who has been there every week as well, because it's not just young people who are helping at the Valencia Center. And we know that there are others of you who have expressed an interest in being part of it. And we promise that over the summer we're going to figure out how to get those background checks done quickly so that we can put more people there to help. But in the meantime, yes, Shalon came after a busy day at work, and so did Curtis, but Malky came all the way from Jackson to be able to be here. She orchestrated the whole thing. She is the driving force. It was her panel last year on privilege at the ISJL conference that made me come home and say, there must be something that we can do in the community at large. So it's because of Malky that we're doing that. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Please come and enjoy the Oneg Shabbat.
And a happy birthday to Helaine.
Thank you. Oh, we do. We do need to say a motzi, and I wonder, is it out there? Yes. Oh, underneath. All right, I need all the kids again. Anybody who wants to go to the Oneg Shabbat needs to help. Thank you, Holly, for reminding me. I'm just ready to go eat and drink.
Make sure you're not drinking that stuff.
Yeah. All right. Everybody get a hand on it. All right. And we go. Hamotzi lechem
Ares, we give thanks to God for bread.
Our voices rise in
song together
as our joyful prayer is said.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi heaven
haaretz b'tei avon. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And these guys will make short work of this challah, but there's more challah out there. You can take some back to your family. Take some to your mom.